hives. So that segregation of duties. And also they have a sense of understanding when threats are coming. So they can pick up the hormones of threats, but then send signals to the other bees in the hive to warn them. And also this, one of the most incredible things about them is the ability to communicate. So if they found one of the scout bees has gone out searching for some really good nectar, they found a great flower with beautiful, tasty nectar, will come back to the hive. And I'm not sure if you've heard of this or seen this, but they do a special dance, which is called the waggle dance. And depending on the direction of the dance and how long they do the dance for, that gives the information to the other bees exactly where to find that flower with the tasty nectar. And also they can communicate via a form of debate, which is, again, amazing to think of. So when they're searching for a new nest, different scout bees will go out and find suitable locations for a nest. And then all come back and do a waggle dance to show the direction and the distance. And so they'll have all of these different directions and potential new nests. And then the other bees almost kind of taking that information, then vote on what they think would be the best option. And this can take up to 3 or 4 days, so studies have shown. And they're kind of, through this process, eliminating different options. And then finally, as a group, deciding on the best option for their new nest. So they're kind of like a collective, they become almost a collective mind deciding through this cooperative process what their next best step would be. And it's just mind-blowing, really, to think about it. So many examples of symbiosis where mutually plants and animals benefit each other. We've got the example on the image here of the clownfish with the anemone. The clownfish kind of hides amongst the tendrils of the anemone and relies on the anemone for protection. So any predators would get stung by the anemone, and the anemone relies on the fish for food. So they work together in that symbiotic relationship, in the same way that the ant and the acacia tree do, that we mentioned earlier, and bees and flowers have that same symbiosis. So again, another way to illustrate that really our true nature of nature is to cooperate. Oh, I've gone the wrong way, sorry. Two great examples. Do you know these? Yes, yeah, yeah, just incredible. And thinking about the geese there, you can see on the left-hand image. So the geese fly, and you may have noticed this, in a V formation, and there's very specific reasons for this. So the V formation, they say, improves the efficiency of their flight, or the distance they can fly, by 70%. And the, um, the the flapping of the wings provides the uplift for the following birds in that formation. The lead goose is encouraged by the other geese in the formation through their constant honking, as it were. So you hear geese when they're flying making this racket, but actually they're encouraging the one that's flying at the front. And then they'll take it in turns to take the lead role. In the same way that you see a team of cyclists cycling in a cycle race. Elephants here, so just great examples again of teamwork and cooperation. and just such beautiful animals. I was reading the other day about there was a small baby elephant who'd fallen into this muddy stream and was kind of trapped and in real danger. And the mother was trying unsuccessfully to retrieve him, but couldn't. And then the other elephants from the herd noticed what had happened, and it took 3 elephants, I think, in the end, working together, a natural sense of cooperation to bring the baby elephant to safety. So again, yet another example. But actually, what I think is the most powerful example I've ever come across, and my favourite is of cooperation in nature, is that of the redwood trees. So Radhanath Swami, who I heard talking about this from the Hare Krishna temple, was in California walking through the redwood forests, and he came across a park ranger who was talking to some tourists and telling them about the secrets of the forest. And he was explaining how redwood trees and sequoia trees are the largest trees on the planet, right, to huge, huge heights. And they've stood for centuries, some maybe even into thousands of years, and endured windstorms and blizzards and earthquakes. How have they managed to do this? When actually their roots are really quite shallow. This is the strange thing. So how have they managed to stand with such shallow roots and withstood all of these challenges? And the park ranger said, well, let me tell you the underground secret of the redwood tree. And the secret is that the roots grow outwards rather than down. And they grow outwards seeking the roots of other redwood trees, seeking to connect with other redwood trees. And when they meet, they embrace and they intertwine. And that provides them with the strength. So that unity is the strength. And as other smaller trees emerge, even though they may be small and frail, they soon connect into that underground web of roots that's intertangled, but providing the strength. So all of the trees, either directly or indirectly, are connected to each other in the redwood forest through this underground network of roots. And it's such a powerful example. And I'm not sure if you've heard the phrase the wood wide web before. So this kind of takes that onto another level. And there's a scientist called Susan Simard who has studied forests and how they connect. Said forests are cooperative systems. Trees talk to each other and they share resources across species. They do it through the roots connecting, but also through fungi, lots of fungi underground that helps the passing of messages and warnings and connections. So not only are trees providing the strength to stand up, but they're communicating with each other underground. So another example really of how our paradigm should really be one of cooperation. So many examples telling us that cooperation is the natural way. But what are the barriers to cooperation? Internally, in the situations that we're in our life, how do we successfully develop a culture of cooperation in whatever situation we might be in? And I think, probably the biggest barrier is that of ego. And you mentioned earlier about under that competitive mindset, there's that need to prove yourself. The ego becomes dominant, and that becomes a barrier to working together. As we get into a cycle of comparisons, and whether that comparison be a favourable or an unfavourable one, there's still comparisons are damaging. So if we're comparing ourselves as superior, comparing ourselves as inferior, yes, yep, yeah, yep, yes, yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, what's your name? Nadeem is saying that in some organizations, leadership um, create a barrier through the way that they're wanting to dominate and impose their will, and that prevents others thriving and prevents cooperation. Yes, absolutely. Um, and again, that comes from that sense of competition, and it may be that those leaders are experiencing external pressures, and that's the way they feel they have to implement these external pressures. But absolutely, that prevents real, true cooperation happening. Um, and on a personal level, kind of trying to find a way to um, chip away at our ego and reduce comparing, not comparing ourselves with others, or getting into a mindset of, oh well, no one noticed me, so I'm going to withdraw my cooperation now, or that kind of self pity mindset, which again comes from a place of ego. Um, but of course, our most powerful tools is always the ability to choose how we perceive any situation. And at every moment, we've got that to connect to each other on a deeper level, which I think lots of people found, even though in the school context we were connecting often virtually, there was a much greater sense of team. I think people got much closer, and it's the same with our parents actually. The parent community with our school just became a much brothers who were farmers, and they had adjoining farms, and for 40 years they'd worked together and collaborated, um, been great companions to each other. But then they had a conflict, and like with many conflicts, it started as a small, tiny, little problem, and what was a molehill soon became a mountain. And that long collaboration fell apart, and they were very frustrated and angry with each other. And the elder brother received a knock on the door, and a carpenter arrived. The carpenter said, "I'm looking for work. I'm sure I can provide some form of help for you." "Well, yeah, I expect so," said the older farmer. "Now, that creek over there, you see, now my brother, who's on the adjoining farm, he made it bigger. I'm sure he only did that to annoy me. So I want you to go over there and build something so I don't have to see him. Fed up of him." So the carpenter took his tools, went over to the creek, and he worked all day. The older brother went off into town, and then when he returned at sunset, his jaw dropped and his eyes widened. "Kind brother, you've forgiven me for what I said and did, built this bridge so we can come together again." Of course, the older brother was shocked and but happy that that friendship had been reborn. And he said to the carpenter, "Well, why don't you stay? I've got a few more jobs for you." And the carpenter said, "I'd love to stay, but I've got more bridges to build." And actually, when we have that mindset of always building bridges, then we're building a bridge to cooperation. Um, and of course, cooperation really has to start internally. Um, and and we can build that sense within us when we take time to reflect, to contemplate, to get to know ourselves, and to connect to the true self, the soul. We can build the strength to cooperate in any situation. And thinking about the different faculties of our soul, the mind, the intellect, and the impressions. Often it's difficult to get our mind to cooperate with us. So it can be at times like a wild horse. We can be at the whim of our feelings and emotions. Um, but if we learn through meditation to strengthen our intellect, to listen to our inner wisdom, to our conscience, that helps strengthen and emerge the virtues and the qualities that are innate within all of us, and the ability to discern and make the right choices. And when you think about any virtue, um, there's always how I feel a family of virtues that kind of link. So we talked about ego being a barrier to cooperation. If we're able to inculcate the quality of humility, the ability to listen, to communicate effectively and hear the ideas of others and be prepared to be wrong, then actually we can find a way forward as a team. And that sense of humility is so powerful, but actually probably one of the most powerful virtues. But it's always twinned with self-respect. It's one of the great things about humility. You can't really have humility until you've got a deep respect for yourself. Um, but being in any group situation, if we're working on a task, it's important to be prepared to be wrong and to find the best idea or the right way forward. And actually, with that comes freedom because we're not tied to one particular idea. We're open. We're open to the ideas of others and to finding the best way forward. So easy to go into any situation and feel, yeah, no, I've got a great idea. This is the one. This is the one that we've got to go with, and kind of be wedded to that and tied to that. Whatever happens, that's the idea. But actually, it's much more powerful to go in with, okay, I've got a couple of good ideas, but let's listen and see if we can find the best one for this situation. Of course, linked to that is appreciation, thinking about the different qualities in a team, and also being deliberately bothered to spot those qualities, see the qualities in others. When we're able to see that, we can see how a team fits together. And we mentioned the importance of responsibility, being prepared to step up to a challenge. Sometimes that takes courage because we're putting ourselves in the firing line, as it were, if we're being prepared to step up. Um, we mentioned the example of the indoor athletics team and the importance of enthusiasm. Often the spark for a task, a collaborative task together is one person's enthusiasm, but also it's what keeps it going and what helps build momentum. That momentum helps ideas grow and multiply and strength grow and multiply. Generosity, being prepared to generously give my time, my energy, actually our two most precious possessions, really. Giving our time and our energy to a task generously. Working together to encourage, support all the members of the team helps continue to build momentum for any task. And then love. And actually, I remember hearing this a long time ago, but love is almost like white light in that all the colors of the spectrum are merged in white. All the virtue spectrum merged in love. Um, and there's love for a task, there's love for the team members, then anything's possible. Any challenge can be overcome. And I've got on the side of the screen there the upcoming Inner Space project from virtual reality to virtue reality. Um, so keep your eye out for that, and we'll be hoping to launch that project in June, where we're exploring the innate virtues that lie within all of us amongst our local community and finding ways how we can explore and develop all of those virtues internally. Then I think about how powerful our vision of others is, thinking about the importance of appreciation for developing cooperation. And there's a Holocaust survivor called Viktor Frankl. There's a small, grainy speech of his, which is online, and he's talking about believing in others. And he references this quote by Goethe, which is, when we treat man as he is, we make him worse than he is. But when we treat him as if he already was what he potentially could be, we make him what he should be. So our vision of others is so powerful. And Viktor Frankl in this little talk, so if you can find it on YouTube, it's only about 4 minutes long, and it's called Viktor Frankl, I Believe in Others. And he's giving the analogy of how when an aeroplane is flying towards an airfield, and they always aim to the north of the airfield, let's say, depending on what the prevailing wind is. They're taking into account the prevailing wind. So when they aim north, the wind is bringing them back, and that means they actually reach the airfield. Whereas if they aim for the airfield, they would end up south of the airfield. And in the same way, our vision of others, we see them in their full potential. And in the field of education, this is what we're kind of endeavoring to do all the time, to see everyone in their best light. And actually we elicit that from them. And such a powerful tool for developing cooperation. And as that sense of cooperation develops in a team, there's that two-way or multiple-way flow of positive energy, which builds momentum and excitement, and then how it just feels really exciting to be part of a task that's growing and developing, and you're achieving something that's much bigger than yourself, and that beautiful energy that can transform, a bit like the analogy of light. So when competition is the darkness, like cooperation is the light, coming in to remove the darkness. But this flow and this energy flow creates trust, joy, encouragement, empowerment, and is such a beautiful virtue. And we think within that, we go back to how we were talking about the common paradigm of the time of being competition. But actually, we want to build a world where cooperation is the dominant paradigm. And it all starts with a vision. And really, that should be our defining characteristic. And as a team, we work in partnership. And there's a lovely analogy of partners, rather than standing facing each other, are standing facing the same direction, looking outward. And you may have heard of Jo Cox, a politician who was sadly killed soon after the Brexit referendum. But in her first speech in Parliament, she said, we have far more in common than that which divides us. When we focus on what we share rather than that which is different, we can build a cooperative society. So we celebrate our differences, but we think about the things that we have in common, which are far more. Such a powerful quote. We think about that energy to uplift the mountain, connecting to ourself and emerging our true qualities, drawing power, wisdom from the source. And that gives us the energy to to lift the mountain and create the right kind of paradigm. Okay. So those are kind of my thoughts on cooperation. Shall we have a couple of minutes? Any sort of questions or comments that you would like to
What I think so generally you observe that the corporate environment work, the cooperation part, like the cooperate with some even in your family, like you face opinions, yeah. People have different opinions.
Yeah.
That's where the problem started. Yeah. Even with me, I'm not someone who can, digest difference in opinion. So sometimes I try to say agree to disagree, but I start feeling angry on someone not understanding me. So I believe even this happens with most of the people whom I've met, that when you have a difference of opinion, if the team have a lot of people having different of opinion, how would you manage them to come on a similar ground? Even when you are not agreeing with your team, how would you come on a similar ground? That's I think one of the things which I have.
Yeah, so that's frequently happens, and sometimes you have to accept and go with the majority. And if you're kind of working on something together, and even though you may feel strongly about something, sometimes you've got to be prepared to let go of that and go with the majority in a group. Or another way, if you feel really strongly and you feel really this is the right way, then a trial or a pilot, say let's try this for a week, or let's try this for a couple of weeks. Let's try out this idea, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. We'll give feedback and see, is it working? What are the problems? So often that chance to try something out can help people understand why your idea is powerful, but also maybe help sometimes us understand that actually it wasn't quite the right thing after all. So being prepared to be wrong sometimes is important. But if you feel really connected to an idea, giving it a trial period is often a useful strategy.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to say, when you were talking about people and groups and things working together, I just wanted to give an extraordinary example, because I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous and I've been sober for 30 years now. And of course, it's all over the world. And what it is a group. And I have never heard my story. I didn't drink like that. I didn't. There are many differences, but what we always look for is the similarities. And that's what you were talking about. Instead of thinking about differences, I'm so different from you in that way. How am I similar to you? I'm similar just because I'm sitting in this room with all of you. And when you think how it's gone all over the world and saved thousands of millions of lives by a group of people coming together like that mountain, supporting each other. You don't have to pay any money. Everyone, it's all autonomous. The meetings run whether one turns up or 200 turn up. The tea is made. The rent is paid. There's no one in charge as such. It's such an extraordinary phenomenon that started 60, 70 years ago in America by two people cooperating and building this bridge. And I just wanted to say that as you were talking about that. But what I find for me is what I wanted to ask is that I always feel as if I need help. I'm an actor, and if I'm putting on a play or even trying to write something, I always feel as if I want some help, and very often I don't get it. It's got to be quite solitary especially if I'm trying to set something up. But I always felt that in meditation and a lot of the spiritual teachings is that, maybe I'm wrong here, that somehow I should be self-sufficient, because it says in one of Daddy Janki's books in the morning messages, what happens if you are reliant on something? What happens if that thing isn't there anymore? So I'm always caught between a rock and a hard place. Like, is it wrong of me to want the support of other people? Or should I be able to do things on my own?
Okay, well, I mean, I think we want to develop that self-reliance, and that's really important. Being independent and connecting to ourselves and the divine and having that as our source of reliance. But actually, when we want to complete certain tasks, we need to do it as a collective. And I would say that's the difference. So certain things where we'll need a team of people to work together to achieve something. So that's so you're not being reliant in that way because you've still got your sense of independence, but you still need the contributions that others will bring, and the special qualities that others will bring. You've still got a sense of self-reliance within that sense. Okay, so we'll just have a short meditation to finish. Did you have a question? Okay. Okay. So allowing my body to relax. Take a moment to observe my breathing. Picture I, the soul, sparkling jewel of light. Feel a sense of peace, calm. Fly up beyond this building to the night sky. Up beyond this, to the silence of the soul. Connect the source, supreme soul. Strength, love, from this position. See planet Earth. Think about all the ways cooperation exists on this beautiful planet. Nature, about how I, the soul, develop qualities to create a cooperative world, step by step. Myself, my workplace, my community,
Thank you, Jim, for the wonderful talk and all the tools and tips given. Thank you, too. And our next week topic, same time, same place, and the topic is leading with feminine power. And whatever Jim shares today, more about that is in a book called The Ultimate Frontier. It's available in the shop if anybody wants to browse through. And today we are very sorry for our online viewers because we had some technical error, but hopefully we'll be back to normal next week. So once again, thank you for joining us and have a safe journey back home.
Thank you.